Hi everyone, it's Plastic EP coming from Australia, and let me tell you, we've got two very special VIP guests. We've got Tony King and his wife Donna. How are we
Hi.
today? And we're going to be talking about the world premiere of Esong Global Rock, and we welcome you to the show because this is riveting, and everyone in the world wants to hear about this fantastic pioneering new TV show that's coming to the world. Tell us about it.
Well, it's called Esong Global Rock, and we debut in the 2025-2026 TV season worldwide in 116 countries. That's a lot of countries.
It's a lot,
So
yeah.
I just want to wish everybody around the world a Happy New Year. We write songs each week, right? Another year is coming when here on New Year's Day. Another year has passed us by here on New Year's Day. Ooh, while you move, when you move that way, everything's okay here on New Year's Day. That's all it is. We write and record new songs each week in 116 countries all over the world. And it's really exciting because it creates a whole lot of new songs in a whole lot of countries that weren't there the previous, the previous season. And I'll start with a little bit of history. As you know, I had a big hit called The Clock Stopped Ticking all over the world. I don't know if it comes in, but this is the roots of Esong Global Rock, yeah?
Yeah.
Right here. The Clock Stopped Ticking.
That's a big worldwide hit, that one. Fantastic song.
What do you call it, Donna?
The clock that keeps hitting.
Clock ticking. So that's how it all started, but the clock stopped ticking, and then the record came out too much great fanfare. And then we had a couple of hits off it in Europe. Produced by the great Peter Sullivan. It's not unusual to be loved. I'm seeing best friend Sir George Martin, famed Beatles producer. So came out in Europe and then did very well. We had back-to-back double A-side singles, Clock Stop Ticking, Nancy Rocker, What Can I Do in Pretty Penny? That came out in Europe, did very well in 2000. Then they released the record into America without a contract, and you can't do that, so we had to sue these people. And while we were in federal lawsuit, my attorney at the time, the late great Jeffrey Gill from William Morris and the Concepts West, suggested that we go to China. So he sent me to China in 2001. I was a little bit nervous and apprehensive, but they were very nice when I got there. And they very quickly figured out that I could release the record as the clock stopped ticking as Tony King in the world's largest market for film, music, TV, and even great American, Australian, New Zealand, Canadian, English, European artists, right? And so I went there, and lo and behold, they loved the clock stopped ticking. I was now Tony King. In the new book written by my friend Ginger Gilmore, Dave Gilmore's longtime wife from Pink Floyd, Bob Evans Becoming Tony King, she goes into great detail about how I went from China and then next into Russia. Same thing, clock stopped ticking by Tony King. And India. And every country I went into, I was amazed by the artists that they had, Daniel. I was blown away by the great artists in China. I mean, just massively great artists. And they had a great rock scene there, too. I was really blown away. Same thing in Russia. They had a great local rock scene, great artists everywhere. It reminded me of America in the 1960s a little bit. Like, they were very Beatle-y, power pop. I was shocked that they liked that in Motown, It didn't hurt that I was from Detroit. And so then I went into India, then every part of Latin America. We went back to Europe and started working on what was then called just Global Rock. It's all in this new book, Bob Evans Becoming Tony King by Ginger Gilmore, out now everywhere. And so at that time, it was just the lawsuits going on in America, raging on in federal court, which we won a couple years later in an out-of-court settlement in our favor against the German record company. So we took all that money, put it back on our TV show. At that time, it was just called Global Rock, right? It was just a songwriting show. So moved the clock up a few years, come back to America. My then attorney, Ken Burrows, husband of Erica Jong, the author who wrote The Fear of Flying, which sold 50 million copies. Got picked up by Michael Marshall when he was the vice president of Columbia Pictures. And the next day, Kenny Burroughs called Michael Marshall, and boom, before I knew it, Michael and I were on for 9 hours. He said, amazing, man, that you know all these artists in all these different countries, particularly China, India, the Middle East, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Egypt, all over the world, right? Really. And he was like, wow, this is a really great idea for a TV show, Global Rock. It was just called Global Rock. And so we went from that into meeting with the TV department of Sony. And so a guy named James, their TV guy, says to Nicola J. Ferry, who was working on the show at the time, she had done Soundsafe for PBS. She was a really famous Emmy Award-winning TV producer. And so in a meeting with the TV people at Sony TV, James said to her, what's so different between your show and the new Pitbull Jennifer Lopez show, which Sony TV developed, and it was canceled after 6 episodes? She kind of froze a bit and didn't really say anything. I mean, she was really put on the spot because there's TV executives looking at her, right? Mm. I happen to have a guitar with me, so I go, special love I have for you. My baby blue, all that time without a word. Bad finger breaking blue. Didn't know you think that I'd forget that your love I have for you. Baby blue. And the people in the TV department go, wow, we put that song into Breaking Bad. Mm. And so and then he says to me, turns to me and says, you come see me tomorrow. Let's talk tomorrow, it says, and so that was it. And the next morning, he says, what you need to break this up into different parts and explain it exactly what we need to do. You can't just have a songwriting show. And he says, because of your knowledge of the world, Michael Marshall, who's now the president of Sony, will tell you that, when it comes to artists in China, India, that's 6 billion people. Mm-hmm. If you take all of Asia, and then you go to India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Every one of these countries has great artists like you do in Australia, we do in New Zealand, America, and the rest of the world. He'll say, his famous saying is, Tony's always looking for the next hit single, because that's what I do. I write songs every day. So we broke it up to where we have a couple hosts walk out like in America, Donna's the co-host of myself, a great actor named Carter Roy, who's the star of the hit TV show Law and Order. And because she's a young actress who's been in like 150 TV and films. Mm-hmm. So the four of us are the hosts on Esong Global Rock America. Every country we have 2 or 3 or 4 hosts. They walk that week's artist out, and then they write and record a song. Part 3, we do a little bit of Donna Purchase in concert. If Ringo's on, he'll do Don't Come Easy. And then everybody joins in. Part 4, we record the new song that we wrote in part 2. Mm-hmm. At the end of that week's episode, it's released into every other country simultaneously. And then anybody who comes on our show keeps 40 cents on that week's recording. So if it's hypothetically, let's just say somebody like Harry Styles and somebody like Joe Walsh with a country star, maybe like Carrie Underwood, if they write that week's song, Let Me Love You Tonight, and that record sells 1 million copies in one country, where they still, 72% of the world still buy, sell, and make records in the hundreds of millions. So we're still talking about physical records, right? Which are still bought, made, and sold. Unbeknownst to most Americans, Brits, New Zealanders, Australia, are still bought and sold in the hundreds of millions all over the world. They still make records and CDs, right? In many countries that we're talking about here, mm-hmm. of these 116 countries. So if that artist is on that week and they sell 1 million copies of that week's recording, right, on the American version, they make 40 cents, which is 400,000. Our record company, take 40, and then Sony take 20 for distribution, 40, 40, 20. So if 1 in 100 people in China watch Esong Global Rock, that's 100 million people a week just in China. Mm. If 1 in 100 million people in India watch the show each week, that's 100 million people in India. You see what I'm saying? So if you get into Latin America, 700 million people, if 1 in 100 people in Latin America watch Esong Global Rock, That is about 60 million people just in Latin America, 1.1 billion people in Africa. We have great artists in every country in Africa. Ghana, Starboy comes to mind. We have great artists in every, and Nigeria, which is like a massive country, 236 million people. South Africa, Caroline von Jospel, Bobby von Jospel. So that's 1.1 billion people. So if 1 in 100 people, excuse me, in Africa watch a show, that's 100 million people.
It's a lot.
And so you get into the moderate Middle East, Algeria, Tunisia, Jordan, Egypt, 100 million people. Even these countries like Thailand, Turkey, and then you get into Russia, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kurdistan, Moldova, Belarus, Hungary, Bulgaria. Each one of these countries has the same top Taylor Swifts or Billie Eilish's. You see what I'm saying? They have the biggest artists in each country. So every country, we spent 6 years handpicking the greatest artists in 125 countries. We've narrowed it down to 116 countries for the first 13-week season.
And there's some great artists on there.
Some great artists, yeah, Donna.
Fabulous.
So at the end of each 13-week season in America, China, India, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Nigeria, Morocco, Jordan, Egypt, Thailand, Japan, at the end of each 13-week season, the people of America pick their favorite song and artist, and they advance to week 14 along with the winners, the top vote getters in New Zealand. Could be somebody like Brooke Fraser, she's on, or Beck Runga, she's on, or anybody in, any of the great big artists in New Zealand or Australia. If Jimmy Barnes is on, anybody who's on, the top vote getters advanced to week 14 in Madrid, Spain, and then the world again votes. They watch, it's a 3-hour episode. They watch about a minute of each one of the artists. And then the top 10 vote getters go to week 15 in Athens, Greece, the Olympics. And they pick their favorite song and artist, and they become Esong Global Rock Artist of that 13-week season.
Well, I got to say, this is very pioneering work, and this is like very pioneering TV that's totally global. I don't think there's been a show, from what you're describing to me, that's fully, totally global, because your audience is basically the world. So, I mean, who sets out going to the bigger audiences in the whole world? And I mean, to me, that makes America and Australia, like the markets we think are huge, but when you think overseas, the markets they got, it's like unbelievable, isn't it?
Well,
exciting,
here's the thing, I mean, I forget who did this article, but somebody did an article, a few years back, and I remember it came out, label owner artist expands the notion of the world music industry. It talks about me going into China, India, Russia, and it says Evans keeps, not normal. He works in 3 time zones all over the world, works with governments and non-government types to secure deals and releases with different artists. And this really, this was done by a guy from the Wall Street Journal and a guy from a national newspaper, but it came out, and then when they do an article like this, it comes out, a lot of different newspapers pick it up. But it talks back then about really the genesis of what we now call Esong Global Rock, right? Same thing, we still work in 3 time zones all over the world. When most people in America are going to bed at 9 o'clock, we're going to work in China because China and Japan are open, Asia's open, you're open at midnight. Actually, India's on a half-hour differential, so India at 12:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to work in India. By the time we hit Russia at 12 a.m., it's 9 a.m. in Russia, Moscow. And then by the time, Europe opens up at 3 a.m. in Germany. We have Helen Fish. We have the biggest artists in Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Holland, Luxembourg, Belgium, France, Italy, Spain. The list goes on and on. By the time we hit those countries in Europe, it's 3 a.m. By the time we hit the United Kingdom, England, Scotland, and Wales at 4 a.m., it's not, we go around the world, right? You know what I'm saying? By the time we hit New York City at 9 a.m. American time, business is kind of slow because business is not that good in New York. But at 12 noon, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, it's still very bad because Los Angeles is suffering because of streaming. Everything appears to be streamed for free now, right? As a consequence, and I'm not talking negative about anybody here, It's just not my cup of tea. The streaming people have literally killed. I mean, for 30 million streams, you make, $750. That's it, And like somebody, I think Joe Bonamassa rightly said on a recent thing he did, he had three friends who wrote massive, I think 6 big hits for massive artists here in America, and they made $750 off of 30 million streams. He said, Joe Bonamassa, I'm just quoting Joe Bonamassa. He said,
That's true.
how is that fair? And sometimes, what did he say? They're saying Spotify that they're overpaying. He calls it the Kardashianism of the music industry. And he said this baloney about them giving you like a Gucci shirt or Nike for endorsements. It's all bull, He said one thing: it still costs the same amount to make a record in Australia, New Zealand, America, England as it did in 1990, but yet the artists here are paid, $750 for 30 million streams. It's like Billy Joel and Don Henley's calling it the United States of Google, YouTube. He said the only reason they make records is for a poster for their tours, because there are no more records. Simply put, these things no longer exist. Records, right?
Yeah.
Not in your country, not in my country. I'll tell you, a friend of mine that works in the show, Jesse Barish, great hit songwriter. Happy New Year, Jesse. He went out and pressed, I think, 30,000 CDs of his new record, right? Spent a lot of money making it. And he couldn't give the CDs away because nobody has CD players in America anymore. Interesting, huh?
That's very interesting. But I got to say, here in Australia, the vinyl record is strong as, and not only that, everyone can listen to the music the way they like it. I listen to streaming, but I'm still a CD person at heart. I get in my car, I want to hear my CDs. When I'm at home, I want my choice. I want my CDs.
Exactly.
I mean, that's it.
I've never gone away from CDs. That's just me.
Yeah, it's still there. There's still
It's still there. The problem is that more and more new cars don't have CD players in them, right?
Yeah.
And so it's very hard to even. We tried to buy a CD player for Christmas and could not find one. They're getting harder and harder to find, right? CD players.
Exactly.
So unless you're like 60, 70, or 80, and I'm not knocking that, but I'm saying our demographic on Esong Global Rock is 18 to 35. I mean, we have these great artists in countries that most people may not be familiar with, but nonetheless are great. If you get into a country like China, we have Jim, we have Lil Chan. These are big artists. Amir Bag in Pakistan, but Sajad Ali. These are, that's 232 million people. You get into South Africa, 165 million people. We have Carolyn Von Jospal and her brother Bobby. Malaysia, Penny Tai, Jacqueline Victor. Singapore, Tanya Chu with Stephanie's son. But you get into Brazil, and we have Paulo Fernandes. These are, Brazil's got 200 million people. But even the Philippines has 165 million people, and they still, to a certain degree, still buy records, But you get into India, where we have Andrea Jeremiah, Kiba Jeremiah, Kitty Gandhi, and then there are countries that kind of surround them. And you've got, oh my God, Eurasia has 3 billion people. With China, that's 3 billion people. If you take CCTV, they're going to Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, Thailand, Taiwan. And we have Aylin and Jalen. I mean, that's 3.5 billion people, man. And then India, Eurasia, that's 6.5 billion people. Throw in Africa, 1.1 billion people. Do the math, that's 7.2 billion people that still buy and sell, make records in the hundreds of millions.
I got to say, these numbers and the research you've done, to me, it's mind-boggling. And to actually be able to watch this show, it's going to be mind-boggling again, because you're going to get the best of the whole world as a global place. Where do you get that? One place and worldwide. To me, it's a lot like the Beatles when they did that song, All You Need Is Love, and it went first time on satellite around the world, and no one knew how great it was until they did it.
That's right.
Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, the same idea. Here's the thing. I'm going to quote Guy Clark. We just watched Without Getting Caught or Getting Killed. Guy Clark was a great singer-songwriter. This guy is a friend of mine, and that died a few years back. But he was like one of those great Texas songwriters, right? And he used to say, "I'm cursed with artistic integrity." Well, I love that line. Artistic. I'm cursed with great artistic integrity. Thank you, Guy Clark. But I mean, on this show, we still try to have artistic integrity, right? As Guy Clark would say. And a certain bit, so we try to make it, we try to have, like in America, we'll have an older classic rock artist with a younger, hot young artist. Kids like might be Harry Styles and Donna. I don't, you know, I'm just hypothetically talking. And then we'll have a country artist. It could be Carrie Underwood or somebody like that. Or
It's a variety.
so we have three different artists each week on. Same thing in China. The artists are not the same. So we break it up in three categories: young, old, and maybe a little bit different, you know, whether it's Bangladesh with Tishma or it's Moldova. I mean, every country has 100 really big hit artists, right? And the great thing about these different countries that we're talking about, whether it be Egypt, you know, you get into Jordan, you get into Tunisia comes to mind, but so does Kenya. Nigeria, for God's sake, Tia Savage, she's on fire. She's the biggest artist in Africa. To have her host, I mean, that's 232 million people that will watch the show because she's hosting, but they'll watch. You got to remember, this show is on in 116 countries at the same time.
It's global, yeah.
Like you said, like all you need is love the Beatles. That's a good way to put it, by the way. I never thought of it.
Yeah. Also, I got to say, right, being global, we're talking now 2025. Forget about what's gone before, but everyone's got to understand. Elvis, Haloa, the concert from Hawaii was mind-breaking. Went satellite everywhere to the world, and that's another great event that lives on even today. So, I mean, I can't compare what will be to what has been, because there's no comparison. If it lives up to what we're hoping it's going to be, I mean, it's going to be totally mind-blowing for the TV viewer and every person on the planet.
And
absolutely.
Another great thing, the artists get to keep the soundtrack. We don't keep the soundtrack. So think about it like this. The artist in China makes 40 cents off that week's recording. And then the Chinese record company doing the deal, they take 40 cents. And then the distributor takes 20 cents. So it's 40, 40, 20. So if that Chinese artist sells 1 million copies in India, which they could, or 10 million copies, and then around the world, 20 million copies, you're going to make a lot of money for being on the show that week. You see what I'm saying?
Everyone benefits.
Everybody benefits.
Yeah. So it's a winning situation.
So,
anyway. Yeah.
a friend of mine, a very, very, very famous guy that came out of Liverpool, said to me recently, he said, this is a very, as he was walking to play the Tokyo Dome, he said, Tony, this is a very ambitious idea, he says to me. He's, I think, 80, he'll be 83. He says, that I hope works, because if it doesn't work, we may not have a music industry in the United Kingdom. He's from Liverpool, by the way, in the year 2027, you know. That's what he said to me. It was a compliment, you know. He said, it's a very ambitious idea that I hope and pray works.
Yeah.
As he was walking to play for 100,000 people in Tokyo a few years back. So that was a compliment, you know. And the fact that he sent us a Christmas card and a Hanukkah card this year was nice, you know.
But isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of those older English guys, they're seeing this maybe as the savior of rock and roll. I never thought about that, but you talked to my friend Artie Cornfield, who the father of Woodstock, the other day. I mean, he sees this show the same way. He's a co-contributing producer, but Artie Cornfield, the same thing, you know. He wrote all those massive hits for all those massive people. Pied Piper, you know, I Love the Flower Girl for the Cowsills, Dead Man's Curve, but he put on Woodstock, you know. And he told somebody, let's sign the Beatles. I Want to Hold Your Hand. He launched Apple. He ran record companies. He did. Hi, Artie. Happy New Year. But he's done so many things that he's like a walking, talking. It's like, you know, because you listen to him. We're on the phone the other day, yeah?
Yeah.
And he's saying the same thing. He grew up in the era where he came out of the Brill Building, you know?
Yeah.
With Don Kirscher and then, you know, Goffin and King, Lieber and Stoller. I mean, hell, he came and he's still alive, walking, have him, you know, granting ideas is just simply amazing, you know. And he also sees this, you know, in a kind of a Woodstock way. Don't forget, he put Woodstock together with his friend Michael Lang, the most popular music festival of all time. So we're very blessed to have people with that kind of artistic integrity on this show, you know. To quote Guy Clark.
But I'm just saying now,
in
2025, we've just come now to 2025, we're talking. As the year progresses and we come closer to the show and the premiere, I mean, you must feel this massive build-up already from now. I mean, I can tell you now, the word will get out and everyone will find out about Esong Global Rock. And they won't stop talking about it because the build-up is like something that's never happened before. To me, it's a bit like the moon landing in '69. You know?
Exactly. It's like a movement. It's going to be a new movement when you.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna bore you for a couple seconds, right? But if you take a look at, we started in Australia, where you're at, New Zealand, South Korea, China, Italy, Pakistan, England, India, Japan, Indonesia, France, South Africa, Malaysia, Singapore, Turkey, Brazil, Israel, Taiwan, the Philippines, Hong Kong, Egypt, Greece, Vietnam, Russia, Spain, Finland, Sweden, Romania, Czech Republic, Colombia, Denmark, Norway, Canada, the Netherlands, which is Holland, Luxembourg, Belgium, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Mexico, and then we go into countries 37, which is Puerto Rico. We have Nola there. Nigeria, Tio Savage, Portobello, Tanzania, Ali Cabo is the host there. It's a massive market. Morocco, Ghana, Stowboy, Scotland. We have England, Scotland, Wales, broke up. Algeria, Iraq, Wales, Tunisia, Lebanon, Jordan, Jamaica, San Maria. We have Valentina Montero there. Switzerland, the Congo, Lambaba, Haiti. We have Jim, Poland, Cleodata. Ireland, we got great artists in Dominican Republic, Portugal, Slovenia, Serbia, Ukraine, Cuba, Saudi Arabia, Moldova, Azerbaijan, Belgium, Turkmenistan, Pakistan, Thailand, Macedonia, Argentina, Hungary, Latvia, Bulgaria, Lithuania, Iceland, Estonia, and then we go into Austria, Sri Lanka, Angola, Croatia, Armenia, Belarus, Cyprus, Slovakia, Albania, Nicaragua, Guatemala, Costa Rica, U.S., Kenya, Peru, Senegal, Ivory Coast, Benin, Venezuela, Chile, Ecuador, Panama, UAE. These are some of the countries.
There's a lot.
Every one of these countries, you see that? There's 2 or 3 hosts. The 2 or 3 hosts are the biggest artists in those countries. So, and then they want to have their biggest artists on because it's more of a competition thing. It's kind of like Eurovision meets World Cup. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they want their artists. They want to have the biggest artists on because they want to win. We have a saying here, and that is, "Don't go to war. Come on, Esong Global Rock." You know, because it could be a little country like our country, New Zealand, my adopted country, or it could be the United States, it could be Australia. It depends on the top vote getters. Whoever gets the most votes becomes Esong Global Rock of the first 13-week season. It also creates 1,200 new songs just in 100 countries, and there's 4 13-week TV seasons in each year. So that creates 5,200 new songs that were not there the previous year.
It's amazing.
They're going to be heard around the world.
That will be heard in every country. The soundtracks will be massive. And then we'll have Esong Global Rock tours in the second year. You see what I'm saying? Just like they have American Idol. But this is, somebody said this is like The Voice times 1,000 or the American Idol on steroids. I love those shows. One of my showrunners, the showrunner does lights, camera, action. Matt said to me, and he used to work at Merv Griffin Enterprises. He was on American. He was a showrunner on American Idol seasons 2 through 11. He said to me, you don't need to have a bio. He said, just say you're a songwriter who does a music TV show, and that's it.
Well, Tony and Donna, I just want to thank you.
He gave me a compliment. He said to me, these artists are so good in these countries that everybody in America will get this. He said, because there's a lack. He said this. He said this is like America when the Beatles touched down in February 5th, 6th, 1964. If you remember, it was kind of Muldoon music, you know what I'm saying? When they touched down, they blew the roof off because they were different. He said, when people see these artists out of Bulgaria, when they see Paula selling, these different artists, man, when they see Accent, when they see Jim out of China, when they see Nikita Gandhi out of India, they're going to be blown away. These artists are really good. And Mia Bag is a phenomenal artist out of Pakistan, You can check out Amy and Aline Anthony out of Pakistan doing The Clock Stop Ticking. Wendy Salta out of Peru doing The Clock Stopped Ticking, and Latin and Spanish is called Tempa. She did a great job. I had a hit with it. Or Sam and Ed's doing one of my songs called Pretty Penny in Spanish and Argentine. But the point is, these artists are really good. When my friends hear these different artists, they're like blown away, going, "Wow!" You know. So I see this as 1964 all over again. I think American artists will embrace these artists from around the world.
I think your homework and everything you've done, to me, it's mind-blowing. I want to thank you, Tony and Donna, for being on the show and telling everyone about the premiere of Esong Global Rock. As I said, we want everyone to go out there and get your world-famous hit right, The Clock Stopped Ticking. Go out and buy the book written by Ginger Gilmore. Bob Evan Becomes Tony King. It's a fascinating book as well. Your journey is a true story, and that's written on the cover of the book. And I just say, just a massive year, 2025. We want everyone in the world now to concentrate, and the build-up to Esong Global Rock has just started, and it's totally massive. Thank you so much, both of you.